The moment Prince William stepped into the room, there was a tension that could be felt even from across the palace walls. Some say the air itself shifted when he began to speak, his gaze sharp, unwavering, and filled with a kind of quiet fury that only comes when a man has uncovered a betrayal so deep it shakes the very foundation of trust. What he revealed that day was not just about family disagreements or sibling rivalry. It was about secrets, manipulation, and a backdoor deal that threatened to tarnish one of the most beloved figures in the monarchy, Kate Middleton. And at the center of it all was Prince Harry, William's own brother, whose decisions in recent years have stunned the world in ways no one could have anticipated. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine for a moment discovering that someone you grew up with, someone you trusted implicitly, had been working quietly behind the scenes with a professional team. A team whose only goal was to reshape public perception, to spin narratives, and to smear someone you love. You would feel anger, disbelief, and a profound sense of betrayal all at once. This isn't just hypothetical for the British royal family. For William, it was reality. And for the public, the repercussions were just beginning to surface. The story we are about to unfold is not merely gossip or tabloid speculation. It is a meticulously pieced-together account of hidden communications, leaked documents, and first-hand accounts from insiders who witnessed the slow unraveling of trust between the princes. At the heart of it is a secret pact, a collaboration between Harry and Meghan's PR operatives, aimed at undermining Kate. The audacity is staggering. The betrayal cuts deep. And the implications are more than just personal. They ripple through the monarchy, the media, and the public's perception of the royal family. It all began subtly, almost imperceptibly, as many of these conflicts do. At first, there were small disagreements, private comments, whispers at family gatherings. People outside the royal circle might have brushed these off as minor sibling tensions, the kind every family experiences. But William noticed patterns, subtle moves that hinted at a larger strategy. The leaks to certain newspapers, the way stories were framed in interviews, the timing of narratives hitting the press. It was no coincidence. Someone was orchestrating a campaign, carefully curating the public's perception of Kate while shielding Meghan from criticism. And the most shocking revelation? Prince Harry was not just aware. He was actively participating. To understand the weight of this, one must consider the history of William and Harry's relationship. They were once inseparable, brothers bonded by shared experiences, public scrutiny, and the shadow of a tragic childhood. They laughed together, fought together, and protected each other. But as time passed, the bond frayed. Differences in personality, lifestyle, and outlook on public life created subtle fissures. The arrival of Meghan Markle into Harry's life acted as a catalyst, widening the gaps and exposing vulnerabilities in the royal dynamic that had long been hidden from the public eye. William, known for his composed and strategic approach, began to piece together the fragments of what he now understood to be a calculated campaign. He observed the public narrative shifting in ways that cast Kate unfairly in a negative light. Stories of alleged tension, supposed favoritism, and personal criticism emerged with uncanny timing. In private, he learned there had been meetings, exchanges, and communications between Harry and the PR team, strategic maneuvers designed to elevate Meghan's public image while subtly undermining Kate's. Each leak, each headline, each seemingly innocuous interview was part of a broader plan. What makes this even more shocking is the level of sophistication involved. This was not amateur meddling or casual gossip. This was a professional operation involving experts skilled in public perception, media manipulation, and brand management. Harry's role, according to insiders, was not passive. He provided information, coordinated timing, and even suggested angles that would maximize damage to Kate while keeping Meghan above reproach. For William, the discovery was both infuriating and heartbreaking. How could a brother, someone he once trusted completely, participate in a scheme meant to tarnish someone he loved dearly? The implications were immediate and personal. Within the palace walls, conversations shifted. Trust became a scarce commodity. Allies and confidants whispered privately about what had been uncovered, cautious about leaks, but unable to ignore the growing tension. The public, blissfully unaware, continued to consume stories, tweets, and news segments, none of which reflected the truth behind the orchestrations. William was left with a stark choice: confront the deception, protect his family, and expose the backdoor dealings, or remain silent, allowing misinformation to shape the narrative indefinitely. But why now? Why choose this moment to reveal the truth? Timing, as insiders reveal, is everything. The years of carefully coordinated PR strategies had culminated in a tipping point. New leaks, legal pressures, and the constant scrutiny of the media meant that the house of cards could no longer be held together. William, always conscious of legacy, reputation, and fairness, recognized that action was necessary not just to defend Kate, but to safeguard the integrity of the royal family. And so, he stepped forward. Yet, even with this revelation, there was no simple resolution. Public perception, once shaped, is notoriously difficult to shift. Media outlets had already run stories, framed narratives, and created lasting impressions. Correcting the record would require evidence, testimony, and strategic disclosure, all while navigating the delicate politics of royalty, public opinion, and familial loyalty. For William, the path forward was not just about exposing Harry's actions. It was about carefully balancing transparency, protection of loved ones, and the long-term impact on the monarchy. As the story unfolded behind closed doors, those closest to the events began to realize the gravity of what was happening. This was not a mere disagreement over personal choices. This was a deliberate attempt to manipulate perception, to influence public sentiment, and to gain advantage through deceit. And the deeper William dug, the more shocking the findings became. Patterns emerged, revealing coordination between private communications, strategic media placements, and targeted messaging, a level of planning that suggested long-term intent rather than impulsive decisions. It is important for the audience to understand the emotional toll of such discoveries. William, despite his public composure, faced intense internal conflict. Confronting a sibling about betrayal is never easy, and doing so in the shadow of global scrutiny elevates the stakes immeasurably. The weight of family history, the shared experiences, and the unspoken loyalty that once defined the brothers' relationship all compounded the emotional intensity. Every revelation brought with it a mix of anger, disappointment, and sadness, forcing William to confront not only Harry's actions, but also the underlying dynamics that allowed such a scheme to take root. And yet, there was no turning back. The truth demanded exposure. The public deserved to know what had transpired, and Kate's reputation needed protection. The delicate balance between transparency and discretion had to be navigated carefully, with evidence strategically presented and narratives carefully corrected. In the coming chapters, we will explore each layer of this story in detail. The secret meetings, the coordinated leaks, the PR strategies, and the personal confrontations that brought these truths to light. Every detail matters. From the timing of certain stories hitting the tabloids, to private communications intercepted by palace aides, to the subtle ways Harry's suggestions shaped public perception. Each piece is a thread in a complex tapestry of strategy, betrayal, and familial conflict. By understanding these layers, the audience can fully grasp not only what happened, but why it matters, and how it continues to influence both the royal family and the public's perception. And now, as we prepare to dive deeper into the heart of the scandal, one question looms larger than any other. How far did Harry go in coordinating with Meghan's PR team? How calculated were these actions? And what will be the consequences when the full truth comes to light? William's discoveries were only the beginning. The revelations, confrontations, and strategic moves yet to be revealed promised to shock even the most seasoned royal observers. It began innocuously, as most fractures in relationships do. A small disagreement here, a misunderstood comment there. But in the world of the British royal family, where every glance, word, and gesture is scrutinized, these tiny fissures can widen into cracks that threaten to split the very foundation of trust. For Prince William and Prince Harry, the rift did not appear overnight. It was a slow burn, a tension that grew quietly but relentlessly, fueled by miscommunication, jealousy, and ultimately, secrets that would shock the entire monarchy. The early years were different. William and Harry, just a few years apart, shared an unbreakable bond. They laughed together, confided in one another, and even when their mother, Princess Diana, passed away, they found solace in each other's company. They were brothers in every sense of the word, partners navigating the labyrinthine world of royal expectations and public scrutiny. But as adolescence gave way to adulthood, differences began to emerge. William, disciplined and cautious, gravitated toward duty and tradition. Harry, impulsive and fiery, craved freedom and authenticity, often clashing with the rigid protocols that William embraced. The media played its part, as it always does. Stories were spun, leaks were planted, and public perceptions began to diverge from reality. William was often portrayed as the dutiful heir, steadfast and reliable. Harry was the rebel, the unpredictable younger brother. This narrative, while simplified for public consumption, planted seeds of tension that would later blossom into full-blown conflict. Every minor disagreement was amplified, every difference in opinion scrutinized under a magnifying glass. The arrival of Meghan Markle into Harry's life acted as a catalyst, accelerating tensions that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Meghan, a former actress with her own ambitions and a keen understanding of media influence, quickly became a central figure in the family dynamic. Her relationship with Harry, though initially private, became a matter of public fascination. Every appearance, every statement, every interaction was dissected and debated. And within this scrutiny, fissures between the brothers widened. William, ever protective of the family's image and Kate's reputation, observed the shifts with growing concern. It wasn't just Meghan herself that caused tension. It was the influence she wielded, the strategies she employed, and the team she assembled around her. Her PR operatives were skilled, methodical, and focused on shaping narratives in ways that favored Meghan and, by extension, Harry. They understood the media's appetite for drama and were adept at manipulating it to their advantage. William, sensing the patterns, realized that the stories portraying Kate negatively were not random. They were calculated, targeted, and designed to shift public opinion subtly yet powerfully. At first, William tried to address concerns privately. Conversations were held, hints dropped, and questions asked. But Harry, loyal to his wife and protective of his own autonomy, often dismissed these concerns. "The media always exaggerates," he would say. "You're reading too much into it." But William couldn't ignore the patterns. The timing of leaks, the framing of certain stories, and the repeated focus on Kate's alleged shortcomings all pointed to a coordinated effort, an effort in which Harry played a more active role than he would admit. As months turned into years, the tension escalated. Family gatherings became strained. Private conversations were fraught with unspoken accusations and subtle digs. Every interaction was measured, every smile analyzed. William, normally calm and composed, felt frustration mounting. He struggled to reconcile the brother he had grown up with, the brother he had confided in, played with, and protected, with the man who seemed willing to conspire against his family for personal gain. This growing rift did not go unnoticed by the palace staff. Advisors, aides, and household members whispered in private about the changing dynamics between the princes. Some tried to mediate, offering counsel and suggesting compromise. Others watched warily, unsure whether to intervene or remain neutral. The royal household, once a place of cohesion and shared purpose, now mirrored the tension and mistrust that had taken root at its very center. Public perception added another layer of complexity. While the world viewed William and Harry through a lens of nostalgia and admiration, unaware of the private tensions, the brothers themselves were acutely aware of the pressure to maintain appearances. Every event, every public engagement, required careful navigation. The slightest misstep could be exploited by the media or, worse, by those with personal agendas within the family. For William, this meant constant vigilance, watching not only his brother's actions, but also the ripple effects those actions could have on Kate and the wider royal image. The stakes grew even higher as Meghan's influence became more entrenched. William began noticing that negative stories about Kate coincided with high-profile appearances or announcements involving Meghan. The timing was too precise to be accidental. Meetings, dinners, and private conversations seemed to be strategically leveraged, subtly shifting narratives and public sentiment. William, ever meticulous and strategic, documented these patterns, building a mental and sometimes literal archive of incidents that painted a troubling picture of coordination and intent. But the rift was not solely about media manipulation. Personal choices, perceived slights, and long-standing grievances all played a role. William, the elder brother and future king, bore the weight of responsibility for the monarchy's reputation. He had a duty to protect his family, uphold traditions, and ensure stability. Harry, on the other hand, sought autonomy, personal happiness, and control over his own narrative. The collision of these priorities created a tension that was both personal and political, private and public. The emotional toll was profound. William experienced a mix of anger, disappointment, and sadness. He had hoped for dialogue, for reconciliation, for understanding. But each revelation, each carefully planted story, deepened the sense of betrayal. Kate, caught in the crossfire, faced her own challenges, maintaining composure in public while navigating the subtle undermining happening behind the scenes. The strain on relationships was palpable, and the consequences of inaction grew more severe with each passing day. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Documents, messages, and private communications surfaced, revealing that Harry had been more than a passive participant. He had actively collaborated with Meghan's PR team, offering insights, confirming narratives, and even suggesting strategic angles that would maximize public sympathy for Meghan while casting shadows on Kate. For William, this was not merely a violation of trust. It was a deliberate, calculated action that threatened to destabilize both family dynamics and public perception. The weight of this revelation was immense. William, normally measured and restrained, realized that inaction was no longer an option. The time had come to confront the situation head-on, to protect Kate, and to address the public narrative with evidence and authority. But doing so meant stepping into a minefield of media scrutiny, public speculation, and potential backlash. Every move had to be calculated, every disclosure carefully timed, and every interaction with Harry approached with both caution and resolve. As the story begins to unfold, it becomes clear that this rift is about more than just individual choices or familial disputes. It is about power, perception, and the intricate dance of influence that governs the lives of those born into royalty. The decisions made by William and Harry, by Meghan and Kate, reverberate far beyond private disagreements, shaping the monarchy's image, influencing public opinion, and defining the legacy of a generation. And yet, even with all the evidence, the emotional complexity cannot be overstated. The brothers are bound by blood, history, and shared experience. Yet betrayal has created a chasm that no apology alone can bridge. William's next steps would not only reveal truths, but also force difficult decisions about loyalty, trust, and the balance between family and duty. Imagine a machine so precise, so ruthless in its efficiency, that it could manipulate global perception without anyone noticing. That machine existed, and its engine ran on strategy, timing, and influence, all orchestrated by Meghan Markle's PR team. From the outside, Meghan appeared charismatic, polished, and effortlessly composed. But behind the scenes, a sophisticated operation was quietly shaping narratives, targeting specific individuals, and strategically leveraging the media to control public perception. And shockingly, Prince Harry, someone William once trusted implicitly, was entwined in it all. To truly understand the magnitude of this operation, it's essential to recognize how public relations can be weaponized. PR is not inherently nefarious. In most contexts, it manages image and communication. But when combined with a calculated personal agenda, it becomes a tool for manipulation. Meghan's team, according to insiders, was not just reactive, they were proactive. Every interview, every social media post, every public appearance was meticulously planned to craft a narrative that elevated Meghan while subtly undermining others, particularly Kate. William began noticing the patterns early on. At first, they were subtle, small headlines questioning Kate's parenting style, insinuations about her demeanor at public events, comparisons that placed Meghan in a more favorable light. On paper, these might have seemed like isolated incidents. But the timing, frequency, and coordinated nature of the stories told a different story entirely. They were not random. They were the fingerprints of a highly organized PR machine. This machine operated with remarkable precision. Each element, leaks to specific journalists, strategically timed interviews, social media campaigns, was designed to create a cascading effect. One article would spark online debate. That debate would then be amplified by other outlets, creating a self-reinforcing narrative. It was subtle, sophisticated, and nearly invisible to the untrained eye. But William saw through it. He noticed how narratives were carefully constructed, how certain storylines were introduced and allowed to fester before being corrected with a spin that favored Meghan. But William saw through it. He noticed how narratives were carefully constructed, how certain storylines were introduced and allowed to fester before being corrected with a spin that favored Meghan. What made this even more insidious was Harry's role. Far from being a passive participant, he allegedly provided insider knowledge, confirming details, offering insights, and even suggesting angles that would maximize the impact of stories targeting Kate. William had hoped his brother would act as a bridge, protecting the family while maintaining autonomy. Instead, he discovered that Harry had become an active contributor to the very campaigns that were undermining Kate's public image. It's difficult to overstate the emotional toll of this discovery. For William, it was not just a professional concern, it was deeply personal. The thought that a brother, someone who had shared childhood secrets, laughter, and grief, could be complicit in a scheme designed to damage a sister-in-law he adored was almost unbearable. The combination of personal betrayal and public implications created a storm of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. The operation's sophistication became more apparent as William delved deeper. Meghan's PR team, made up of seasoned professionals, understood the media ecosystem better than most royal aides. They leveraged social media, traditional media, and even private networks of journalists to ensure maximum impact. They didn't just react to narratives. They created them. Stories that painted Kate in a negative light coincided with key events in Meghan's life. High-profile appearances, charitable initiatives, and interviews designed to showcase her as compassionate, forward-thinking, and universally adored. The contrast, when amplified by strategic leaks, subtly influenced public perception without anyone realizing they were being guided. William's awareness of the strategy grew as more evidence surfaced. Messages, meeting notes, and testimony from insiders painted a picture of careful orchestration. Harry, who had once been the protective younger brother, was now a participant in the narrative construction. William had to reconcile the fact that a sibling he had trusted was actively shaping a story to his advantage and Kate's detriment. It wasn't just the action that shocked him. It was the intent, the calculation, and the apparent lack of remorse. To illustrate the extent of the manipulation, insiders recounted specific incidents. For example, when Meghan was preparing for a high-profile interview, questions about Kate's alleged behaviors would mysteriously appear in public discourse shortly beforehand. Social media threads would preemptively critique Kate's fashion, parenting choices, or demeanor, setting the stage for the interview's contrast. The timing was precise. The impact was undeniable, and the orchestration suggested a level of planning that went far beyond ordinary PR management. William began to connect the dots. Each seemingly isolated event was part of a larger mosaic, a carefully constructed plan to reshape the narrative surrounding Kate and Meghan. He recognized patterns. The stories always followed a similar trajectory. First subtle insinuation, then widespread amplification, followed by damage control or redirection that highlighted Meghan positively. Each phase reinforced the other, creating a feedback loop of perception that seemed impossible to disrupt. The emotional stakes for William were compounded by his protective instincts toward Kate. She had weathered public scrutiny before, but the coordinated nature of this campaign elevated the threat. Every story that reached the public was not just a headline. It was a calculated strike. William understood that these weren't mere coincidences or misjudgments. They were deliberate moves designed to weaken Kate's standing in the eyes of the public and, by extension, within the family. As William pieced together the evidence, he realized the implications were far-reaching. This was not simply about media appearances or public perception. It was about influence, reputation, and the power dynamics within the royal family. By participating in this PR strategy, Harry was not only undermining Kate, but also destabilizing familial trust. The operation had the potential to shape public opinion on a massive scale, affecting the monarchy's image, charitable initiatives, and even internal decision-making processes. But it wasn't only the professional strategies that were shocking, it was the personal betrayal. William had confided in Harry countless times, sharing private thoughts, vulnerabilities, and insights about Kate and the family. That trust, once thought unbreakable, had been leveraged in service of a calculated campaign. Every revelation cut deeper, intertwining public consequences with private heartbreak. The scale of Meghan's PR operation also highlighted the power of modern media. Social platforms, viral stories, and instant communication allowed for rapid dissemination of narratives, often before traditional fact-checking could intervene. This made the machine's work even more effective. It operated at the speed of information, shaping opinions before the public could process the full context. William, recognizing this, understood that counteracting such a campaign required not just evidence but timing, precision, and strategic planning of his own. Even within the palace, the operation's sophistication was a source of concern. Advisors and aides struggled to keep pace, often discovering narratives only after they had taken root in public discourse. William realized that protecting Kate required more than public statements. It required uncovering the full extent of the machine, documenting Harry's involvement, and preparing a response that could withstand scrutiny from both the media and the monarchy itself. The deeper William looked, the clearer the picture became. Meghan's PR team was not just defending their client. They were actively orchestrating narratives, guiding public perception, and leveraging Harry's trust to maximize impact. Every leak, every interview, every social media post was part of a carefully constructed plan. For William, the realization was both infuriating and sobering. The brother he had once protected had become a participant in a campaign designed to harm someone he loved. The emotional stakes were higher than ever. The intersection of personal betrayal, public scrutiny, and strategic manipulation created a storm that could no longer be ignored. William faced a choice: confront the operation quietly, risking continued manipulation, or expose the truth, risking family discord and media firestorms. The decision weighed heavily, knowing that any misstep could have lasting consequences. And yet, even as William gathered evidence and prepared to act, there remained one burning question. How far had Harry truly gone in his collaboration with Meghan's PR machine? Was this a series of misguided decisions, or a calculated campaign with long-term intent? The answer, William realized, would not only determine the next steps, but would also reveal the full depth of the rift between the brothers. Imagine discovering that someone you trusted implicitly had been negotiating in secret, crafting agreements behind closed doors that directly undermine someone you care about. For Prince William, that shocking discovery came in the form of a backdoor deal, a covert arrangement between Prince Harry and Meghan's PR team that was designed to manipulate public perception and strategically smear Kate Middleton. The revelation wasn't just unsettling. It was a punch to the gut, a betrayal that William could neither ignore nor take lightly. The backdoor deal, as insiders described it, was executed with remarkable precision. It wasn't a casual conversation or an offhand comment. It was a structured, methodical plan, complete with timelines, talking points, and coordinated messaging designed to coincide with key public appearances, media interviews, and social events. Every detail was calculated to maximize exposure while minimizing suspicion of any orchestration. William, once he began to piece together the puzzle, realized that the scale of the operation went far beyond anything he had imagined. It started subtly. Early signs were easy to dismiss: minor leaks, questions in interviews that seemed innocent enough, small narratives casting Kate in a less favorable light while elevating Meghan. But the pattern became undeniable. Dates matched up, messaging aligned with public relations objectives, and internal communications revealed Harry's involvement. He wasn't merely aware of what was happening. He was a collaborator, actively contributing to the creation and dissemination of content that would shape perceptions and, intentionally or not, damage Kate's reputation. The logistics of the backdoor deal were astonishing. Sources revealed that Harry had participated in private strategy sessions with Meghan's PR team, offering input, approving angles, and even suggesting tactics to amplify certain narratives. These sessions were clandestine, conducted away from public view and outside the formal channels of the palace. Communications were often coded, vague to outsiders but clear to those in the inner circle. William, upon discovering this, realized that every story that had reached the media about Kate's alleged missteps could be traced back to this orchestrated plan. The emotional impact on William was immediate and intense. He had trusted Harry not just as a brother, but as a confidant, a partner in navigating the challenges of royal life. The realization that Harry had actively participated in a scheme to undermine Kate was staggering. It wasn't just a professional betrayal, it was personal. Every smile, every handshake, every public display of camaraderie between the brothers now carried a shadow of doubt. How could someone he loved so deeply engage in a plan that attacked a woman he adored, that threatened to distort reality for millions of people? The purpose of the backdoor deal became clearer as William delved deeper. It wasn't simply about media coverage. It was about controlling narratives, shaping public opinion, and, ultimately, redefining the perception of the royal family. Meghan's team understood that perception was power. By guiding the stories that reached the public, they could influence how people saw Kate, Harry, and Meghan, and even affect the internal dynamics of the family itself. Harry's participation added legitimacy, providing insider knowledge that enhanced the effectiveness of the campaign. One of the most shocking elements was the meticulous timing of events. Leaks about Kate's wardrobe choices, parenting style, or demeanor at official engagements often coincided with major appearances by Meghan. The contrast was stark and strategic, designed to highlight Meghan's poise and sophistication while subtly questioning Kate's competence. For William, connecting the dots revealed a level of planning that suggested intent rather than coincidence, a deliberate strategy to shift public perception in Meghan's favor at Kate's expense. William's discovery also highlighted Harry's evolving priorities. Once a loyal, protective younger brother, Harry had become increasingly aligned with Meghan's objectives. Whether motivated by love, influence, or a desire for autonomy, he had allowed himself to be drawn into a campaign that directly contradicted the loyalty and trust William expected from him. It was a sobering realization. The Harry he had grown up with, the brother who had shared childhood secrets and protected him in times of vulnerability, had changed. And that change carried consequences that reverberated far beyond the private corridors of the palace. The mechanics of the backdoor deal extended beyond traditional media. Social media platforms, online forums, and even influencers were leveraged to create a cascade effect. Messages would be planted subtly, amplified organically, and then corrected with a narrative that favored Meghan. It was a sophisticated, multi-layered approach that combined traditional PR with modern digital influence. William, who had always been keenly aware of public perception, recognized the danger. The operation had the potential to manipulate millions of people's opinions before they even realized it. Perhaps the most insidious part was the psychological element. By engaging Harry as a partner, Meghan's PR team created a sense of legitimacy that insulated the campaign from scrutiny. Critics could question the media, but when the narrative appeared to have internal confirmation from a trusted royal figure, Harry himself, it gained credibility. William, analyzing this dynamic, understood that countering it required more than exposing facts. It required unraveling a complex web of trust, influence, and manipulation. As William began assembling evidence, a troubling pattern emerged. Every key leak, every strategically timed story, could be traced back to the collaboration between Harry and Meghan's team. Private communications, meeting notes, and insider testimonies confirmed that Harry's involvement was active and deliberate. For William, the implications were devastating. This was not a series of accidental missteps or misunderstandings. It was a coordinated campaign, executed with precision, with full knowledge of the impact on Kate and the family's public image. And yet, despite the emotional weight, William remained strategic. He knew that exposing the backdoor deal required careful planning. Publicly accusing a brother of betrayal is not a decision made lightly, especially when the stakes include family reputation, media scrutiny, and the legacy of the monarchy. William needed proof, context, and timing. He needed to ensure that when the truth emerged, it would be undeniable, unassailable, and capable of protecting Kate while holding Harry accountable. The discovery also forced William to confront deeper questions about loyalty and intent. Had Harry been coerced, subtly influenced, or misled? Or had he willingly engaged in actions that prioritized Meghan's image over familial trust? The answers were complex, layered, and, in some cases, disturbing. William realized that understanding intent was crucial, not just for assigning blame, but for anticipating future actions and protecting the family from further manipulation. The backdoor deal's existence also illuminated broader themes of power, influence, and the role of public perception in modern royalty. Meghan's PR machine was more than a tool. It was a weapon capable of shaping narratives, controlling discourse, and influencing public sentiment on a global scale. Harry's involvement transformed it from a professional operation into a personal betrayal, intertwining family dynamics with strategic manipulation in ways that William had never imagined. And as William prepared to confront the situation, the stakes became clear. The revelations were explosive, capable of altering relationships, reputations, and public perceptions. Every action moving forward would be scrutinized, every decision weighed, and every disclosure measured for impact. For William, there was no turning back. The backdoor deal had been uncovered, the betrayal revealed, and the next steps would determine not only the fate of relationships within the royal family, but also the public's understanding of events that had long been shrouded in secrecy. While the world's eyes were glued to Meghan's every move, Kate Middleton waged a quiet, unacknowledged battle behind palace walls. Few truly understood the gravity of what she faced, or the emotional and psychological toll of being targeted by a calculated campaign orchestrated with precision against her. To the public, Kate seemed composed, elegant, and unflappable. She smiled for cameras, performed her royal duties flawlessly, and carried herself with the poise expected of a future queen. But beneath the surface, she was navigating a complex web of betrayal, manipulation, and relentless scrutiny. Kate's battle was silent, but it was fierce. She could not openly confront the media without escalating the situation or playing into the very narrative her adversaries sought to reinforce. She could not publicly accuse anyone without risking royal protocol or further exposure to criticism. Instead, she relied on a combination of strategy, composure, and inner strength to endure the onslaught. Every story questioning her competence, every insinuation about her character, felt like a carefully aimed strike, and she had to respond without showing vulnerability. William's discovery of Harry's involvement in the PR operation added another layer of complexity. Kate, ever perceptive, began to sense that the attacks on her were not random or accidental. Patterns emerged: the timing of negative headlines, the contrast with Meghan's own media appearances, and the subtle framing of stories that consistently cast her in a negative light. For someone like Kate, whose life had always been lived under scrutiny, the realization that a family member was complicit in this campaign was devastating. It forced her to question not only her public image, but also the trust she placed in those closest to her. The psychological pressure was immense. Every public appearance became a performance layered with scrutiny. Kate had to maintain grace and dignity while managing the emotional strain of being undermined. She had to project calm and composure even when the campaign against her felt personal and relentless. This required a remarkable level of self-discipline, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking. She became acutely aware that any misstep could be magnified, distorted, and weaponized by those orchestrating the narrative. One of the most challenging aspects was the isolation. Royal life is inherently public, but Kate's experience was uniquely challenging. Allies were cautious, advisors were constrained by protocol, and family dynamics were complicated by divided loyalties. The people she trusted were often forced to navigate the same tightrope of discretion and diplomacy, leaving her to confront the attacks with limited support. Yet, she persevered, drawing strength from her inner resolve, her sense of duty, and the unwavering support of William, who became both a protector and confidant. Kate's silent battle was also marked by resilience and subtle counter-strategies. She understood that overt confrontation could escalate the situation, so she employed indirect methods to protect her reputation. Every public statement, engagement, and charitable initiative was carefully considered to reinforce her credibility, highlight her empathy, and counteract the negative narratives. She relied on consistency, integrity, and the power of her own actions to gradually reshape perception, knowing that the truth would eventually surface. Insiders reveal that Kate also developed her own network of support, quietly consulting with trusted advisors who could help her navigate the media landscape and anticipate potential attacks. This network, though discreet, was vital in countering the sophisticated campaigns orchestrated by Meghan's team. Kate's approach was methodical, strategic, and patient. She understood that winning this battle required both timing and resilience. Yet, despite her composure, the emotional toll was undeniable. The relentless scrutiny, combined with the betrayal by a family member, created moments of deep personal struggle. Kate had to manage not only the external pressures of public life, but also the internal conflict of reconciling love for her brother-in-law with the reality of his actions. The tension between loyalty and self-preservation weighed heavily, creating a constant undercurrent of stress and vigilance. This silent battle extended beyond media narratives. Within the palace, Kate had to navigate the subtle politics of the family, balancing relationships with other members while maintaining her own integrity. Every interaction became layered with subtext, every gesture scrutinized for potential misinterpretation. The stakes were incredibly high. One wrong move could fuel the very campaign she sought to withstand. Kate's approach to dealing with the situation demonstrated remarkable foresight. She understood that the campaign against her was part of a broader strategy, one that relied on public perception, timing, and the amplification of subtle narratives. By remaining composed, consistent, and strategically active in her engagements, she effectively countered many of the attacks without creating further controversy. Her resilience became both a shield and a weapon, allowing her to maintain dignity while weathering a storm that few could truly comprehend. The contrast between public perception and private reality was striking. To the casual observer, Kate appeared serene, even immune to criticism. Yet behind the cameras, every negative headline, every insinuation, and every strategic story crafted by Meghan's team was a reminder of the delicate balance she had to maintain. The campaign against her was relentless, calculated, and deeply personal, and she had to endure it with poise. William, fully aware of the situation, became a critical source of support. He shared insights, provided guidance, and coordinated with Kate to ensure that their responses were measured and strategic. Their partnership, built on trust, mutual respect, and shared purpose, became a counterbalance to the manipulations orchestrated against them. Together, they worked to protect not only Kate's reputation but also the integrity of the family and the monarchy itself. But the emotional stakes were not just about reputation. Kate had to contend with the knowledge that a brother-in-law, someone she had once considered an ally and confidant, was part of a campaign that targeted her personally. This realization intensified the burden, adding a layer of personal betrayal to an already challenging situation. Every decision, every public appearance, and every interaction with the media became a test of resilience, strategy, and emotional strength. As the story unfolds, it becomes evident that Kate's silent battle was not merely defensive. It was a demonstration of strategic patience, emotional intelligence, and unwavering commitment to integrity. She understood that the public perception created by Meghan's PR team could not be fully controlled, but it could be countered with consistent, principled action. Every decision she made, every engagement she attended, and every interaction she had was a step in a carefully calibrated strategy to protect herself, her family, and her reputation. And yet, despite her strategic approach, Kate could not predict every move of those orchestrating the campaign. The backdoor deal between Harry and Meghan's team remained a constant threat, its full extent unknown. Every leak, every story, and every subtle attack had the potential to undermine her efforts. The stakes were high, the pressures immense, and the outcomes uncertain. If there's one thing the royal family has learned in the age of 24-hour news cycles and viral social media storms, it's that perception is everything. Reputation isn't built solely on truth anymore. It's sculpted, refined, and, when necessary, completely reinvented by those who know how to manipulate the machinery of media. And few played that game with more audacity or precision than Meghan Markle's PR team. But what no one expected was how far they'd go, or how effectively they'd weaponize the press to control narratives, redirect blame, and distort the truth about Kate Middleton. It began with subtlety, as all great manipulations do. Early on, stories emerged that seemed innocuous, small, seemingly random comparisons between Kate and Meghan. One outlet would note how Meghan was refreshingly modern, while another would comment on Kate's traditional reserve. The surface-level framing appeared harmless, until the timing became impossible to ignore. The positive coverage of Meghan always coincided with a shadow over Kate's image. When Meghan faced criticism, the media would suddenly be flooded with articles focusing on Kate's supposed coldness or detachment. William saw it clearly. The media weren't simply reporting news, they were being played like instruments. Headlines were orchestrated to rise and fall in perfect harmony with Meghan's public appearances. Leaks appeared out of nowhere, framing Meghan as misunderstood and Kate as aloof. Even the language used was strategic. Words like progressive, independent, and trailblazer were attached to Meghan, while Kate's mentions often included traditional, reserved, or outdated. It wasn't random. It was branding, a deliberate redefinition of roles within the royal family. And Harry, perhaps without realizing the long-term damage, had become part of that machinery. He spoke off the record to friendly journalists, providing context that painted Meghan in a sympathetic light. Those same journalists would, within days, release pieces that subtly diminished Kate. The operation was brilliant in its simplicity. Shift focus, redirect sympathy, and create just enough confusion that no one could ever pinpoint a source. William's team began tracking these patterns. They noticed that stories targeting Kate often originated from the same cluster of journalists connected to Meghan's US-based PR firm. These journalists didn't just write stories, they built echo chambers. A single article could be amplified across dozens of outlets within hours, each iteration reinforcing the same message. The effect on public perception was profound. Behind the scenes, Meghan's PR strategists leveraged social media as their silent amplifier. Anonymous accounts, coordinated hashtags, and viral fan campaigns flooded platforms with carefully curated content. Posts defending Meghan appeared in perfect synchrony with attacks on Kate, creating the illusion of organic public sentiment. In truth, much of it was artificial, manufactured outrage designed to polarize audiences and force people to pick sides. William, ever analytical, understood that this wasn't just a personal attack. It was psychological warfare through reputation. Every negative headline about Kate weakened her standing. Every rumor undermined her credibility, and every whisper that she was cold or unwelcoming chipped away at her public image. And because Kate remained silent, refusing to engage publicly, the manipulations often went unchallenged. There was, however, a deeper genius to the strategy. The PR team knew that by making Kate seem untouchable or emotionless, they could frame Meghan as her opposite: human, vulnerable, relatable. Every time Kate displayed restraint, Meghan's team spun it as coldness. Every time Meghan appeared emotional, they called it authenticity. The contrast was deliberate. It was the classic PR move: define your client not by who they are, but by who they aren't. One of the most telling moments came during a high-profile royal event. Meghan arrived in an outfit that drew global attention, accompanied by glowing media commentary about her modern elegance. Within 24 hours, multiple tabloids ran stories suggesting Kate appeared tense, uncomfortable, and distant during the same event. The timing was precise. The goal was clear. When William saw the analytics, when he realized that engagement on stories about Meghan tripled whenever Kate's name appeared in the same article, he understood how the manipulation worked. Meghan's PR didn't just build her up, it used Kate's image as leverage to magnify Meghan's. But what truly alarmed William was how far the reach extended. The manipulation wasn't limited to fashion columns or celebrity tabloids. Reputable outlets, ones the public trusted, were being fed curated information. Articles were framed using insider quotes, many of which, William later discovered, could be traced back to sources connected to Harry and Meghan's network. Each quote was carefully crafted to appear authentic, lending credibility to narratives that, in truth, were designed to deceive. It was during this period that William realized the depth of the problem. This wasn't a series of coincidences, it was a coordinated information campaign. He recalled a briefing from a trusted media advisor who explained how PR agencies plant stories using a tactic called drip feeding. They leak small, seemingly harmless pieces of information over time, gradually building a narrative that feels organic. Once the perception takes hold, a major reveal or interview cements it as fact. Meghan's team had mastered this technique. Over months, they crafted the narrative of Meghan as the victim of a cold royal institution, and Kate, by implication, as its face. The manipulation didn't stop at headlines. Visual imagery played a crucial role. Meghan's PR team worked closely with photographers to control angles, lighting, and composition. Photos of Meghan often portrayed her surrounded by adoring crowds or caught in soft, flattering light. Kate's photos, in contrast, were frequently unflattering, captured mid-expression or cropped to suggest discomfort. Subtle visual cues reinforced the idea that Meghan was dynamic while Kate was distant. And yet, amidst the manipulation, Kate refused to retaliate. She understood that engaging publicly would validate the narrative. Her silence was strategic, but it came at a cost. The more she maintained composure, the easier it became for Meghan's PR team to frame her as detached. The irony was painful. The very restraint that once defined Kate's dignity now worked against her. William found himself torn between his protective instincts and his public obligations. He wanted to confront Harry directly, to demand explanations and accountability. But he knew that a direct confrontation could spark a media explosion that would benefit Meghan's PR narrative. The strategy had been designed precisely for this, to bait reactions, to provoke conflict, and to exploit royal silence as confirmation of guilt. Still, William began to fight back, quietly at first. He strengthened relationships with credible journalists, ensuring that counter-narratives appeared subtly in the press. He worked with advisors to highlight Kate's humanitarian work, her composure, and her quiet strength. These efforts began to shift the tone slightly, but the damage from months of manipulation was already evident. Public trust, once unwavering, had been eroded by constant exposure to falsehoods and distortions. The manipulation tactics became even more sophisticated over time. Meghan's PR team began seeding positive stories in U.S. outlets that would later be picked up by British media, creating the illusion of international support. The tactic exploited the credibility of American publications to influence British opinion, using the global nature of modern media to their advantage. The strategy was bold, effective, and deeply unethical. What William couldn't ignore was Harry's involvement. Evidence showed that Harry had provided private anecdotes, selective truths that, when stripped of context, painted misleading pictures. These tidbits became the backbone of the PR campaigns, allowing Meghan's team to claim insider validation. To the public, it looked authentic. To William, it was betrayal. As the manipulation grew bolder, the royal family's internal trust began to crumble. Advisors questioned loyalties, communications became guarded, and meetings were monitored to prevent leaks. William, determined to uncover the full scope of the operation, began compiling timelines, cross-referencing stories, and documenting connections between media cycles and internal events. The picture that emerged was damning, an intricate web of calculated moves designed to destabilize the palace from within. The culmination came when a series of fabricated stories surfaced, claims so specific they could only have come from someone with insider access. William confronted a senior aide, demanding answers. Within hours, he confirmed his worst fears. Harry had been in direct contact with one of Meghan's PR liaisons during the period those stories appeared. It was the confirmation he dreaded, yet it gave him clarity. The media manipulation wasn't just external, it was being fueled from within. William realized that the battle wasn't just about public image anymore. It was about truth. It was about preserving the integrity of the monarchy against forces that understood how to weaponize perception. And as he prepared to act, he understood that confronting the issue publicly would mean crossing a line that no royal had dared cross before, exposing family betrayal in the open. For weeks, William barely slept. Every conversation replayed in his mind. Every headline seemed like a coded message. Every carefully staged photo looked like part of a larger puzzle. The PR games had gone too far, and William knew the time for restraint had ended. He needed answers, real answers. And to get them, he would have to operate with the precision of a soldier and the discretion of a statesman. It began quietly. William had no interest in palace theatrics or public confrontations. He wanted facts. His instincts told him there was more to the manipulation than the media saw. Harry's involvement, the backdoor communications, the coordinated timing. It all pointed to something organized, deliberate, and far-reaching. But he also knew that in the royal ecosystem, truth had a way of hiding behind polished smiles and whispered denials. If he wanted to uncover the truth, he'd have to dig into corners of the institution that even the crown preferred to keep in the dark. The first step was information gathering. William began meeting with trusted aides in the early hours of the morning, long before staff filled the corridors of Kensington Palace. He chose each confidant carefully, men and women with unimpeachable loyalty, people who had served his family for years without ever leaking a word to the press. Together, they mapped out what they knew: dates of suspicious leaks, journalists who seemed unusually informed, and connections between Meghan's PR firm and British media outlets. What they found shocked him. The same journalists who had consistently published sympathetic pieces about Meghan had also written or sourced negative stories about Kate. Even more disturbing, several of these journalists had recently attended private charity events in Los Angeles that, upon investigation, turned out to be thinly veiled networking sessions organized by Meghan's team. It wasn't just coincidence, it was coordination. But William needed more than suspicion. He needed evidence. His next move was bold. Using intermediaries, contacts outside palace employment, he began tracing digital communications linked to the leaks. He was careful not to leave a trace, using private investigators and media analysts familiar with the way stories spread online. What they discovered confirmed his worst fears. Multiple email addresses associated with Meghan's PR representatives had exchanged messages with a media consultant known for her ties to royal coverage. The content of those emails, draft talking points, story frameworks, and context blurbs that journalists were encouraged to use when writing about Kate and Meghan. The scale of it left William reeling. This wasn't a few manipulated articles, it was a sustained campaign. The coordination was too tight, too precise. Every leak that embarrassed Kate seemed to coincide perfectly with a positive story about Meghan. It was textbook media strategy, but the revelation that his own brother might be facilitating it felt like a dagger in the back. There were moments when William doubted himself. Perhaps Harry didn't realize what was happening. Maybe he'd been misled, manipulated by professionals who understood how to twist narratives for emotional leverage. But every new detail made that possibility harder to believe. Harry wasn't naive. He had grown up inside the same machine as William. He knew how headlines worked. And yet, the trail kept circling back to him. Late one night, in his private study, William pored over a set of internal communications. There, buried among the noise, was an exchange that shattered any remaining illusions. A PR consultant wrote, "H's input helped refine the contrast. Keep her, Kate, in the frosty traditional lane. Helps our narrative." Another message followed minutes later. "M approves. H agrees timing aligns with Vogue feature release." The initials were obvious. H and M, Harry and Meghan. William sat in silence for nearly half an hour, the papers spread across the desk like fragments of a crime scene. He wasn't angry in that moment. He was hollow. The betrayal was no longer abstract. It was written in ink, time-stamped, documented, undeniable. The following morning, William began assembling a small crisis team. Trusted figures who understood both media strategy and royal protocol. Their goal: contain the fallout, verify the authenticity of every document, and prepare for what might happen if this information ever became public. Among them was an old friend from his university days who had since become a digital forensics expert. Over the next few days, they authenticated emails, traced metadata, and confirmed that the communications were genuine. There was no room for doubt anymore. The deeper the team dug, the darker the findings became. Meghan's PR network wasn't just feeding stories. It was creating ecosystems of misinformation. Anonymous royal insiders quoted in tabloids often turned out to be coordinated personas, fake sources planted to give legitimacy to pre-written narratives. In one instance, a supposed former palace aide quoted in an article criticizing Kate's parenting didn't exist at all. The contact information led back to a disposable phone registered under an alias that had once been linked to a US-based PR intern. William realized the operation wasn't just about image. It was about control. By manipulating perception, Meghan's team could dictate how the public interpreted every royal story. They could redirect outrage, evoke sympathy, and frame themselves as victims in a centuries-old institution.